Once people start to know, like, and trust you, they're way more likely to engage with your things. If people don't know you, chances are they're not going to engage in your stuff. If people don't like you, they're definitely not going to buy from you. And if people don't trust you, they're not going to do anything with you. The way that you establish that is by building a relationship, whether it's in person, whether it's online, whether it's through mail, whether it's through whatever. You want to provide information. Hey guys, and welcome to the Medical Entrepreneur Podcast. My name is Dr. Adam Sewell, and I'm here to help you start, grow, and sell your medical practices and reach your goal of having financial freedom. In the medical entrepreneur community, we have a saying: one vision, one purpose, freedom through prosperity. So today what we're going to be talking about is something a little different. Today we're going to be talking about how to actually build a clinic correctly. What are the stages that you need to, what are the things that you need to have in place to actually build the clinic, to make money, to reach that financial freedom? How do you do it? For most medical professionals, what happens is that they go to a long, extended time of schooling and training. And what happens is that they don't really have any business training at all, right? They're unfamiliar with business. A lot of the stuff that people train for in business realistically doesn't really prepare them for the real life business world. So even I know several of my colleagues that have like an MBA and these kind of things. They have little to no more business experience than someone who doesn't. So what I wanted to do today is to give you the lessons that I learned painfully through my career. And hopefully you can use them as a shortcut to, you don't have to go through the same thing I did, and you can learn how to build things correctly from the beginning. And it will save you massive amounts of headache and struggle. So basically there are 5 pillars to a medical practice. These pillars, if you will, are like the columns that hold up a building, or you can think of it like the columns that hold up the Parthenon. Basically, each of these pillars is 100% required to have a stable medical practice that is growing, and to have a medical practice that can deliver to you your freedom through prosperity. So the very first pillar that we need to talk about is lead generation. A lot of people in medicine are very unfamiliar with this concept. This is a well-known concept in the form of sales, in other types of businesses, but in medicine it's kind of overlooked and is definitely underappreciated. Whenever you build a clinic, the first thing you have to think about is how are you going to consistently get new patients? And this is why the number one issue that people have in their business is basically not having enough patients to serve, or they're always trying to get new patients because they don't have a system in place to constantly get people to raise their hand and say, hey, I'm interested in what you have. The lead generation is basically just that. Lead generation is really, really important because you have to have an ongoing effort that ideally is not done just by you, hopefully done by your team, or hopefully done through automated mechanisms, to basically get people that are interested in your services to essentially raise their hand and say, yes, I'm interested. And the reason why this is important is because you have to have a constant flow of new people that are coming in, and you need to basically start to build a relationship with them. What I see with a lot of physicians and nurse practitioners and CRNAs is that they'll go and they'll build a clinic, and they're under the assumption that, oh, if I build a clinic and I open my doors, people will just show up. The reality is quite different than that. Unfortunately, there's also a lot of people in the industry, especially in aesthetics, who will tell you, hey, if you buy this laser, if you buy this product, if you buy this machine, if you do this training, if you do this, whatever, people are just going to show up to your door, and you're going to have a prosperous clinic. The reality is that is basically totally false. I've never known anyone who's had that happen to them. So, and I talk to a lot of medical entrepreneurs, as you might imagine. What really has to happen is that whatever service that you're going to provide, whether you're doing functional medicine, whether you're doing aesthetics, whether you're doing a ketamine clinic, whatever it is, you have to provide some kind of value to the marketplace, be that, education, information, free consultation, whatever that is, some kind of value to get people to raise their hand and say, hey, I'm interested. Because for most people, they don't want to take any risk in terms of like trying to go find a doctor if they can avoid it, right? So number one is you need to basically find a way that you can provide value to them, preferably in a one-to-many relationship, meaning like you produce value once, and then that value goes out and people can watch it and consume it at their own time, at their own pace, and then come to you if they're interested in you. That is the first pillar of the medical practice, which is called lead generation. You have to basically be able to get leads from an audience, be that social media, be that having live dinners and seminars. It could be little town hall meetings that happen in a hospital. It could be having, maybe even working with other physicians to get referrals. It could also be working with other local businesses that have your same customer and working with them to be introduced to them. But getting people to say, hey, I know that you do this thing. I'm kind of interested. Can you tell me more about it? That's all you're looking for. So once you get that piece established and you get people to start raising their hand and say, hey, I'm really interested in what you have, tell me more about it. Then your next pillar of your medical clinic is called nurture. And during this process, what you want to do is you want to provide education. You want to show this potential patient that's coming in, basically tell them about why they should come to you. Tell them about the issues that they have. Help them solve their problem as best you can without them having to come in. So, for example, if someone is having difficulty with their body, they have low energy, they're not sure what's going on, their inflammation is really high, they're having joint pain, and now they're looking for a functional medicine doctor. By you providing education and content to them, what happens is you can nurture that person. So maybe they, raise their hand and say, hey, I'd like to get your free download of like the top 3 things to avoid to make sure you don't have joint pain. And they download that, and now you're going to provide them with educational content that basically allows them to, consume this content, learn more about what's going on. Kind of, you can explain your philosophy of how you evaluate patients, about things that could or could not be wrong with them, providing them information. And what happens when you do this is you're basically helping them along their path. Because when you look at, anytime you look at a path of a patient coming to your clinic, it doesn't start out with like, hey, I need a doctor, let me just show up. It's very rare that happens. Usually what occurs is that someone says, hey, I have an issue. Then they start doing some research online. They may ask other people. They may ask their current physician if there's a referral necessary, if you're taking insurance. But basically what happens is that it's a long process, and a lot of people don't recognize that. And so one of the things you have to realize is that any given time at any marketplace, it's like a pyramid. 3% of any marketplace is ready to go right now. They're ready to buy something from you today. 6 to 7% of that same market is open to the idea of buying something. They're kind of interested. They're looking around. They're doing research, but they don't have to buy it today. It's not like ultra critical. 30% of the market is not even thinking about what you're talking about. They're like, well, I guess there could be something wrong with my gut, or, I guess I don't want to look older every day, or, I would like to get those crow's feet fixed, whatever it is, depending on your market, right? They're not even thinking about it. They're thinking about something else, and you're introducing that concept to them. 30% of the market also doesn't think they're interested at all in it, and that's fine. And then 30% of the market knows they're not interested and doesn't care. And those are people that are probably not going to watch your content. The people that are not going to engage in whatever you're sending out. And so that's fine. Those are people that are not buyers. So the important thing to understand is that at any given time, only a very small percentage of the market, about 3%, is ready to take action today. So by getting people to raise their hand in your lead generation pillar, and then now you're in the nurture pillar where you're basically able to provide them communication, education, content, show them the stuff that they need to know to basically help map out their journey and get them to their solution. And as you start to do that, what will happen is you'll be able to capture the remaining 7% of people that are kind of open to it. And also probably the 30% of people that are like, well, I'm not really thinking about it, but now that you mention it, that does make sense, or now I'm more interested in it. And so that's why it's so critical to have the nurture process, because most of the people that you run into are not going to be interested in coming to your clinic initially. They're not going to be interested in buying your services. They're not going to be interested in doing a consultation with you. They're busy doing other stuff, or they're kind of open to it, but they're not 100% sure. And a lot of this is related to fear, and a lot of this is related to fear of judgment, because when you look, especially in the med spa space, there's a lot of people that are very interested in aesthetics that are, seeing results of other people. Maybe they've been watching stuff on Instagram, but they haven't taken action because they are afraid of going to a medical spa. They're afraid of basically being judged. They're afraid of what could happen. And so as you provide that nurture content, as you provide more information about who you are and what you do and why it's important and what they can do for this problem, what they can do for that problem, you start to build a relationship. And once people start to know, like, and trust you, they're way more likely to engage with your things. If people don't know you, chances are they're not going to engage in your stuff. If people don't like you, they're definitely not going to buy from you. And if people don't trust you, they're not going to do anything with you. The way that you establish that is by building a relationship, whether it's in person, whether it's online, whether it's through mail, whether it's through whatever. You want to provide information. And so I also wanted to kind of review some examples of lead nurture that you can use in your own practice. Number one, and probably the easiest, is to basically make a whole bunch of content via video and then placing it on social media where people can basically watch you, get to know you, and start to build that relationship with you. There's different tactics you can do to do this. But the big picture here is that by making content that helps somebody to go from point A to point B along their journey, by making these little pieces of content that show them all the steps and what's involved, you are helping them understand what is their next step. You are helping them understand what is going on. You're helping them understand what's the journey involved. And then by doing that, you naturally assume the position as an authority or as an expert because they're listening to you and you're not trying to sell them stuff. You're actually just trying to give value to them. And there's one kind of life lesson here in the nurture thing that I found just is always, useful throughout life. And that lesson is that anytime you start a relationship with somebody, if you can give first to them with no expectation of getting anything in return, that relationship in general will flourish. And it sounds so simple, but the reality is that humans very much are reciprocal in nature. It's really hard for you to get a gift and not want to give that person a gift back or help that person in some way. So by basically truly giving out of your heart or out of your soul and like truly making information for people that are seeking this. So if you're a functional medicine doctor and you know there's a lot of people out there and you know that they're suffering with GI issues and they're suffering with low energy and they can't concentrate because they got brain fog and they're trying to hold together a family and a career and deal with kids and soccer games and all this kind of stuff, all will they feel like 10% of their normal selves. What can you help them do today to help them on their journey? Yes, they may need to come to see you. Yes, they may need to have certain treatments by you. Yes, you may need to run certain tests or whatever on them in order to treat them. However, there's so much more that you can do to help them on that way, like explain to them like, hey, this could be happening. And if you have this symptom, it could be because of this. And here's 3 things that you can avoid to make sure that you don't have joint pain because these 3 things are like the number 1 cause of inflammation, et cetera. Like you provide that information. That's how you nurture that prospect. And that's how you get them to build a relationship with you. And then they start to know, like, and trust you. And they're more likely to come in and to see you and take the next step with you because you've already given them value. So I found that to be pretty useful. Your goal with nurture is essentially to hit this kind of balance between education and entertainment. The reality is, like, if you have a very boring slideshow that you're going to be showing on the internet or on Facebook, nobody's going to watch it, right? Like, people just don't have the time. They don't have the interest. I don't know about you, but I'm not going to watch a 45-minute slideshow unless it's something that's really, really important to me. And if you have something that's really, really important, then you could probably make anything and people will watch it because it does solve that problem for them. However, in general, if you can kind of hit that mix between education and entertainment, what happens is you make it fun for them to watch. It's just like watching Discovery Channel. A lot of people love watching Discovery. A lot of people love watching YouTube educational things. And the reason why is because they can take a concept that, could be boring if you have to read it in a history book. But yet on YouTube, when a creator makes it and they animate it and they put a lot of, energy into it and they have different voices and they make the story interesting, you could watch that the same as you watch your Netflix because it's actually entertainment and it's also educational. This is where you want to hit with your things. You want to make it easy to consume. You want to make it fun. You want to make it something that people would want to do in their off time. And so it's easier said than done to do that. But by offering that kind of education entertainment mix, you're going to find that a lot of people engage with your content way more. Another example of nurture that we used to use all the time, particularly in orthopedic clinics, was that we would get a prospect that came in. So for example, depending on how you build your business, you will eventually learn that different types of patients have different values to your company. Now, I'm not saying they're not, as a person, they're all valuable, et cetera, but just from a business point of view, somebody who maybe is interested in having knee surgery may have a different value than somebody who's interested in a massage, right? So like just a different value, because the person who's interested in having knee surgery is likely going to spend a lot more money with you than somebody who is just interested in getting a massage, right? There's nothing wrong with either of them, but from a business point of view, you have to understand who it is that you serve and what is it that you're trying to do. So one of the things that we would often do for people that were in orthopedic space is that when we make content regarding knee pain. If your knee hurts on the left side, what does that mean? If your knee hurts on the right side, what does that mean? What happens if you have knee pain that's underneath your kneecap? What happens if you have knee pain that happens when you sit down, no matter what you do, but it gets better when you walk? You know, what happens if you have terrible knee pain when the weather changes? Like, what does that mean? All this kind of stuff regarding knee pain. And then when people would be interested in making an appointment, we'd schedule them for an appointment. And then the first thing we would do is we'd mail them a whole packet. And in that packet would be some articles to read. It would be an audio CD of me giving a presentation about how, these new things that we're doing to help people with knee pain. It would be basically a photo of like kind of a picture of like a golden pathway is what we call it. Basically a pathway from like, hey, here you are with your knee pain. Sorry, I'm down here. Here you are with your knee pain. Here you are without pain. Here, what are the stages? Like, what are the steps that you have to go through to go from here to here? Just stuff like that helps people understand what's going on. And then what would happen is when those people showed up in the office, they would have their packet with them. Many times would be underlined. If they have any questions, they would address those questions. But for the most part, most of the communication that we normally did with patients every time they came in, a lot of the repetitive stuff was completely done by mailing them a packet with all that information. And the same information was in print form as it was on the audio, which they could listen to in their car, which was just a normal CD. And also on the CD, we had a QR code so you could listen to it on your phone if you don't have a CD player. But interestingly enough, we found that a ton of people actually liked the CD better because they could listen to their car and it's easy for them to transport, didn't have to mess around with anything. And then basically providing that information when they came in, they were essentially in a way like they already understood what was going on. They already understood your approach. They already understood the steps. The only questions they had were just usually individual questions specific to them. And their visit was not only more pleasant, but is also significantly faster. And the people, most importantly, when we did our quality assurance and we got our surveys back, the people enjoyed it way more. If somebody came in and we didn't give them a packet, or in the rare case where like somehow we got the address wrong and they didn't get a packet, the consultations were more difficult. They were more lengthy. The person would have a lot more questions because we were putting all this information in a short period of time. And by having that nurture process, you can eliminate almost all of that. So that way, when you actually do see them in the office, they're essentially ready to go. They may have one or two questions, one or two things where, hey, what about this? What about this? But most of the time, basically all the work had been done, essentially. The next pillar that you have in your process is what's considered conversion. So you have the first pillar is lead generation, getting people to raise their hands. The second pillar is nurture, where you provide them information and education, ideally in the form of the edutainment. And then the third pillar is conversion. How do you take somebody who is a prospect, somebody who's shown interest in your thing, but they haven't done anything, right? They haven't become a patient, this kind of stuff. That conversion process is usually in person for most medical clinics. It doesn't have to be, it can be online, but usually for most medical clinics it's in person. And usually that's a matter of, hey, you're here. What is it how do I get you from here to there? And what is it that you need to do to make that happen? And so that conversion process is sometimes referred to in other businesses as sales process. But what it really is just helping the person make the decision they need to make in order for them to get the result that they desire. So a lot of people, focus on, I don't want to be a salesman. I don't want to do this. Like, that's fine. You don't have to. In fact, it's better if you're not. If you try to sell people stuff in general, it just backfires. The best thing you can do is just actually truly give a care about the patient and then help them find their path, whatever that is, even if it's not with you. And what will happen is you'll build goodwill by doing that. So your conversion process is usually some kind of process where you may ask the same 5 questions to the prospect. And you may just do this repeatedly. Like as you see people, you'll ask these same 5 questions because it helps them clarify in their minds what is happening, what they need to do in order for them to achieve the result that they desire. And then that brings us to our next pillar, which is fulfillment. So now that you've had somebody raise their hand, say, hey, I'm interested, you've provided them value through information and education, ideally in that form of edutainment. They've come into your clinic, or maybe they had an online consultation, and they went from a prospect who's interesting to saying, hey, I'm signing up for care. I'm ready. I want to do the thing that you recommend. And then now it's time to do the thing that you recommend. A lot of people don't do anything at this point, and they don't realize how much it cost them in the end. And I, for one, was one of these people, and it took me a long time to figure this out. So I want, if you learn anything, like, please learn that your fulfillment process is really critical to your business. And there's very simple things that you can do to fulfill what you promised in a special way that adds more value than just doing the thing. So often in medicine, we're always taught like, hey, here's a problem, here's a solution. Here's the problem, here's a solution. If you want to make something special for a patient, if you want to make something special for a customer, you need to take the extra steps to make that happen. So, for example, a good friend of mine is a dentist. And so what she does is, in her dental practice, everybody who comes in automatically gets a hot cloth they put on their face, and it has lavender and it smells great and they love it. And they also get some kind of thing where they put their hands in this little bowl and like helps their nails rehydrate or whatever, and it helps them calm down. Basically, because she's a dentist, she does that. And so people feel like almost like they're going to a spa. It costs her very little to do that, just a little bit of extra work, just a little bit extra employee time. But the impact it makes is huge, because imagine going to a dentist where you normally would sit in a usually uncomfortable waiting room packed with people. Then you get to a small little cubicle, if you will, and there's people to your left and to your right, and you got to get your teeth cleaned, and it may be painful, it may be annoying. What she does instead is giving you all this amazing spa-like experience that when you actually do get your teeth cleaned, you feel like $1,000,000. You feel great. And that fulfillment is so powerful that it helps drive her business. So it's really, the fulfillment pillar is the time where you're able to execute what you promised during the conversion pillar, and basically where you're able to demonstrate that you're able to execute on a very high level, and you want to add things that make people say, wow, this is really great service. I want to tell my friends about it. Wow, I've never had this done before. I've been to, 5 dentists before, and none of them ever got me a face thing. None of them ever had a little thing for my hands, You want to make it very, very special. And so it's a great way to give excellent service. And so we have a little example here of a picture that basically shows that you can, this is an example for like a medical spa where somebody could come in for a facial. You might offer them a hot towel initially for their face, just to help clean everything up, take off any makeup, etc., help relax them. Then you do your services, might be Botox, dermal filler, whatever. The next step would be offering them maybe a skincare package or something like this, where you give them a couple samples that they can use on their skin, to help them achieve the results that they just, are trying to achieve by getting your procedures. And then number 4 would be sending them a thank you card in the mail, just saying, hey, what a great pleasure it was to meet you, and something with a personalized comment so you can show that you actually cared. That kind of fulfillment is a top-notch fulfillment. People love that kind of stuff, and they'll become repeat customers forever, and they'll become evangelists for your product forever if you can deliver great fulfillment. And the last and probably the most misunderstood pillar of any medical practice is the process of ascension, or sometimes people call it resell. Basically, it's the process of taking a customer who has done one purchase with you and then taking them to the next level. And so what that means is that it starts with a fundamental understanding that whenever people are seeking something, they are usually seeking things for a long term, right? So like if someone is coming to you for aesthetics, they're looking to stay youthful, they're looking to look good for a long time. So by them coming to you and saying, hey, I need Botox for my wrinkles, that's probably also a candidate for a PRP facial. That's probably also a candidate for fillers. That's probably also a candidate for a salt facial. That also may be a candidate for old therapy. Maybe, so many things that go on to that one person, because it's actually a journey for them. And so the whole idea behind this last pillar of your practice is to have a system in place to help your customers that you have already basically taken and served, and help them get to the next level they desire. And one of the most eye-opening things we do with medical entrepreneurs is we ask them to give a survey to their customers that are happy. And we ask them to ask their customer a specific question. What other services do you buy that are in the same vein as what you came to our clinic for? So, for example, if somebody came to a medical spa clinic, what other things do you buy that are related to beauty, that are related to looking younger, that are related to skincare? And you will be surprised, or most people will be surprised, how many other things that same person engages in that could be offered at your med spa, that could be offered at your clinic. For example, if you're in functional medicine, how many other things are people taking that you're not familiar with? Are they taking supplements? Are they doing other treatments? Are they doing, these other things? And it will open your mind as to see like what other services that you could offer, because you've already established a relationship with this patient. If you've done a good job in fulfillment, they know, like, and trust you, and you've delivered excellent results. If you recommend the next thing, rather than having to make them go to a different place to find the next thing, if you can provide the next thing to them, it makes their life easier. It makes your life better. And you also make that connection with your patient higher. And so the last process is that ascension process, which is basically to help them by taking the other things that they need along their journey and providing it to them, or making connections for them for that. So hopefully that helps. These are the 5 pillars of a clinic. Remember, it's lead generation, getting people to raise their hands; nurture, where you provide information to that person, where you're able to send them information that's in the form of edutainment, where you're educational but also entertaining. You're not reading a boring speech or something like this. Conversion, which is the process of taking them from a prospect, somebody who's interested but hasn't signed up with you, to become a customer of yours or a patient of yours. Basically signing up for your care plan, saying, hey, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to do what you recommend. Then the process of fulfillment, which is where you deliver to them what you promised that you would do, and do it in an exceptional way, in a way that is special, in a way that makes people feel good. And then the last pillar is ascension, where you determine what else that customer needs or could need and offer it to them at your location or through your connections, basically to make their life easier and better. And if you can build those 5 pieces into your clinic, if you can just keep in your mind, these are the things that need to be present in your clinic, and you build systems around each of those, what you will find is that you will not only have a thriving medical practice, but you will be far on your path to reaching freedom through prosperity. Thank you very much, guys. Once again, thank you for joining me for Medical Entrepreneur. One vision, one purpose, freedom through prosperity.